The stories and photos from the Southeast after Hurricane Helene have been unimaginable, really. That much water just sweeping up houses, cars, and people. A group of forest rangers from New York traveled down there to pitch in with rescues and to help begin the process of recovery. We see the devastation of Helene's flooding through their eyes on today's Story of the Day.
Support for Story of the Day comes from Long Run Wealth, an SEC-registered investment advisor in Lake Placid, providing comprehensive wealth management, retirement, and financial planning solutions. LongRunWealth.com. And from SciTech Business Solutions, training and consulting services to help businesses grow. More information at citec.org.
Hey, I'm David Sommerstein. It's Wednesday, October 16th. First up, the St. Regis Mohawk Tribe is one of 3 communities in New York that will build crisis resiliency plans with the help from Cornell University. Researchers will guide the communities on creating what they call resiliency hubs, existing locations that can be transformed into places where people can turn to during a crisis, whether that's from natural disasters, pandemics, or other kinds of emergencies. The resiliency hubs will serve as communications and operations centers and have reliable backup power. The other communities selected for the project are both in Ithaca. The communities will each receive a $15,000 grant to support building the hubs. When Hurricane Irene hit the Adirondacks more than a decade ago, about 8 inches of rain fell and flooded communities. Compare that to last month, when Hurricane Helene dropped about 30 inches of rain in parts of North Carolina. The storm wiped out entire towns and killed more than 250 people in the South. A group of rescuers from New York, including 4 Adirondack forest rangers, were in western North Carolina when the storm hit. Emily Russell spoke with Ranger and Union Delegate Rob Projacolo, who led the team from New York.
The New York State team that was there, the 16 of us, were at that point the only swiftwater team that had arrived prior to the storm. So we could be operational that next morning before the entire weight of the storm arrived, which, depending on where you were, was approximately 30 inches of rain that fell in 24 hours.
For folks in the Adirondack North Country, how would you compare the kind of devastation that happened to that mountainous environment to what it would be like if that kind of thing happened here?
So Yancey County, North Carolina, where we were operating, is 312 square miles. So very similar to is if every drainage between Plattsburgh and Watertown, all the northern Adirondacks that drains out of the high peaks, if each one of those drainages had 30 inches of rain that fell in it and just devastated every community between Plattsburgh and Watertown. Just a massive area of devastation and needing emergency response in that broad of an area.
Can you take me through a couple of your rescue and recovery missions?
So our very first rescue that we went on at 8 o'clock in the morning on Friday, because the cell towers were all down, there was no landline, there was no power. Each one of the rescues that we were called to kind of had to come word of mouth. And the first rescue was a 15-month-old baby and parents that were in the attic of their house surrounded by the river and afraid that the entire house would wash away. We arrived at that call, sent a rescue swimmer out to the house that was surrounded by the river, and pretty quickly realized that the bubble had kind of gone through at about 7:30 in the morning.
When you say bubble, what do you mean?
Basically a tidal wave of water and soil and trees and landslide material that just ripped down through every river. We decided to have those folks shelter in place in that river. The river was very quickly going down. From there, we ended up assisting the local paramedics for some folks that were literally trying to drive out from their house and hit by a landslide. Drove the car down toward the river, flipped it over, crushed it against a tree, and one of the occupants of that car more than likely broke their back. And the two occupants were able to crawl to a local house. This happened at 9 o'clock in the morning on Friday. So the Rangers hiked in 3 miles with the paramedics to where this person with a possible broken back was, provided medical care, and carried the person out the 3 miles to the ambulance where they were taken to Asheville.
Over the 2 weeks, you were also recovering dead bodies. There was a family of 4 whose home was swept away in the river. Can you just tell me a little bit about what you know of them and what you were able to find?
Yes, there was 4 people that lived along the riverbank that when the bubble of water came down, their entire house was swept away. And in speaking to family members that lived on higher ground, we were able to obtain pictures of the house. They had a very unique blue siding, which we found strewn all over the river close to where the house was missing. Literally, there was just a foundation left. The entire house was gone. Their car was washed over the bank and crushed into the river. And the Rangers found one of the people deceased 2 miles down the river. The Rangers ran the river each day and marked a debris pile 6 miles down the river where they thought it likely that some of the other members of the family may be found. And 2 days after we left, they were able to find another member of the family in that debris pile. The rescue workers that found them literally had to use an excavator to pull all the material. There was thousands of houses of debris just crushed into this debris pile, and campers and mobile homes and sheds. And the Rangers found many dead wildlife along the river, rabbits and turkeys and fox and deer that also perished during the flood.
What's something that would be impossible to really grasp through just photos and videos and interviews? Like, what's something that you can't really understand from an emergency, a disaster like this until you're really on the ground?
Yeah, it might not be what you're exactly looking for, but the resilience of the people that are there, that survival instinct of their needs and how hardworking they are to be able to, within 72 hours, figure out how to build a road when everything is missing, like no pavement, no fill, everything's gone, and they scratch a road out so they can get out.
When you go through an experience like this, where for weeks you're on the ground interacting with people, but also dealing a lot with death and devastation, how does it change you?
Yeah, I mean, it's really hard to see how devastated these people's lives are, but it's a beautiful place, and things will grow back and they'll fix the area, similar to what happened in Keene Valley. I mean, that whole entire valley was devastated, and it grows back and it's beautiful again, and people do a lot of hard work to make it nice again. But they're in for months and months of hard work, like a year at least, to just bring their life back to normalcy. Yeah, it's hard to see that.
That was Forest Ranger and Union Delegate Rob Projaculo speaking with Emily Russell. You can find photos from the rescue and recovery work in North Carolina on our website, ncpr.org. This important work, bearing witness to the struggles in our communities, in our country, and connecting national news with what's happening here in the North Country, it's only possible with your donations. It's our fall fundraiser, the time we ask you to pay the bills for public radio. Give now for journalism you can trust, for news that keeps you informed, and for music and conversation that inspires you and sometimes just feels good. Give now at ncpr.org/give. Thank you so much for doing your part. Music today by Eddie Lawrence of Moira and the Saranac Project of Saranac Lake. I'm David Summerstein, North Country Public Radio.